Good morning, my name is Elise Honeyman and my project is an Academy of Physical Theatre and Stagecraft located in urban Newcastle. It is an academy accredited by the University of Newcastle and its main emphasis is engaging with the public realm. Newcastle teeters on the edge of a turning point. The city seems poised in anticipation for a future and for things to come, which moves away from industrial production towards a more intangible and immeasurable identity rooted in culture, creativity and the arts. That isn't to say that this doesn't always exist in Newcastle. Newcastle has a long history of theatre, with the last 150 years seeing over 10 theatres in Newcastle, one of these being the Victorian Theatre, which is the oldest in New South Wales, and it is also the home to the longest running dramatic arts awards in Australia, even ahead of other major cities in Australia. Despite this vibrant culture which bubbles under the surface, Newcastle doesn't support a professional theatre industry. Therefore it loses a lot of its key talent to other cities and it can't support its own theatre groups. This is largely due to considerable lack in audience attendance compared to other cities and a general lack of public awareness and a disconnect between performers and the city. Without an audience to play for, the art forms we cherish will wither and die. From the onset, this project has been concerned with the symbiotic relationship between the city and the performers of the school. The city provides the lifeblood to the otherwise suffering profession, and there's endless opportunities in the animation of the urban realm by deliberately injecting decrepit urban spaces with the animation of the students and everything, and the associated amenities that come with those. The beauty is in the street. Like that of the 1968 French revolutionaries, the project endeavours to reject the commodification of the arts, the bourgeois theatre, and embrace the public ownership of performance, not only as a means of storytelling in Newcastle, but as a cultural right, and as a way to ensure that the culture of the performance survives. So against the rich fabric of the street, with its complexity, impermanence, texture and character, the Academy embraces the public realm, gaining as much from the vibrant street as it gives. Anyone enjoys the streets, who enjoys feasting his eyes on the shop windows piled high, with all kinds of everyday wares and artful trifles. Anyone who enjoys the cafes is unlikely to be moved by the polished art of serious theatre, unless the theatre shouts as lustily as the streets. It won't attract an audience for love of money. The Parisian desires far more enjoyment from the fetes and travelling theatres than from anything the dramatic theatre has to offer. The Academy is located on a key site in Newcastle, essentially almost like a gateway, a threshold to converging zones within the city, namely Derby Street, a high pedestrian area, King Street, which links up to Hunter Street Mall. We've got the civic area, which it will be activated by the University of Newcastle City campus, as well as Civic Park and Civic Theatre, which will be activated further by this space, as the facility isn't trying to create a theatre space to rival that of Civic Theatre, rather it is creating a hub which then kind of unfolds and envelops the larger area and making that entire zone more pedestrian friendly, based purely on the fact that the sheer number of students and the other students around the area, which will be created from the city campus, will create. By locating the site in the orange, on the corner of Derby Street and King Street, the building endeavours to relink the pedestrian access from Derby Street through to Hunter Street Mall, which is currently characterised by a sheer 3-metre concrete wall, this zone is just showing the back of house of otherwise underutilised space. This being north up the page, you can see that would be there'd be so many opportunities for nice warm urban spaces along that street front. So it is above this concrete wall that the school is situated, poised on the edge of an old coal rail corridor, which would run alongside of that hill and go up this ramp road to pass over Hunter Street. And at the top of this hill existed the first coal mine in Newcastle, and this one here. So this is the site there, and this is the place in which the old rail corridor went. So in the plan you can see the way that this wall is along, and that's the old rail corridor that went alongside that wall and that hill. Along that edge is also a steep parkland which is existing, and a pedestrian pathway which connects Derby Street up to Church Street. which for me was very important to keep that connection there. With such a significant link to our industrial history and the kind of linear and processional nature of industry and the pedestrian access through the site, I started to think about theatre and performance and the school as a kind of series of processes where you break down what is an intangible product in the end, which is live performance, into a tangible, almost industrial type processes. So the set design classrooms, costume classrooms will be the main kind of elements which taper across the site and are kind of designed around the two access points, one being the service line and the pedestrian pathway. With such a significant asset of the wall, I thought it would be interesting to explore the condition of the edge, one being quite harsh, the idea of a porous edge, but it was also very important that I didn't intervene too much with the existing site because I wanted to keep the character of the street, not changing the levels too much and not interventing the wall, but small interventions which kind of played with the ambiguous nature of the street and the public and private ownership on who owns it. So from the King Street approach, as if you're walking down from Hunt Street Mall towards Derby Street, you kind of experience the wall and the school as a street gallery. The wall is otherwise untouched and kind of becomes an opportunity to be kind of cultural show of what the school has to offer, but as well as a processional space for the rest of the city. From here you start to see the first glimpse of the structure, a structure which is almost it really defines that edge, but also acts almost as a veil through which the public sees the school and the levels above. That also is a structure which enables it supports a counterweight facade closer up the street, which is directly relates to the doors of the school. So when the school is open, you'll get a different relation to that facade, as well as the possibility to rig up to that counterweight for aerial performance. The entire structure as well is designed to enable performance of different kinds. So rather than the ground floor just being activated, it's the entire kind of realm within that space. This is the view from Civic Park. So as you can see, the kind of structural canopy system, it creates kind of processional zone along that ramped corridor, which was the rail one. The canopy is distinguished by kind of the undulation of its form. So as you arrive, it's quite tall and a big proud entrance, and it drops down before then kind of rising again in a climactic way to the flexible outdoor performing space, as well as the amphitheatre stair, which then leads the convergence up to the green area and the park up the site, before dropping down and kind of terminating at the end of that linear campus. I want to take you through the site and the way that you would process through that space. But I'll first start with the Derby Street address and the way that edge is detailed. So this area is the school cafe and for evenings bar, which is designed so to continue the kind of flavour essence program of what Derby Street is, all about food and drink and things. It is designed so to kind of bleed from the street into that space and to be a space which is at the extension of the street. It's occupied by the public. The kind of bar itself is designed so to close down using counterweight doors so that it locks up yet doesn't take away the space from the rest of the public realm. You also see in that rendering, starting to see glimpses into what would be windows into the workshop areas where you kind of would see the hoist systems that would operate set workshop mechanisms and things, and that will provide the backdrop to what would be an eating and bar area. This is a section through that set workshop, and you see how these kind of set workshops become like these kind of primary kind of concrete plinths which support then the secondary private spaces of the school above, which obviously look into these spaces and also that's cut through the stair which leads up to the kind of private space of the school, the opportunity of which also closes down in a similar facade as used throughout the building of these doors with the retractable. And then you start seeing in the way that public kind of open plaza is addressed from the street and the way you process up process outlet space. As you enter into this space, once within this space, the public and students experience the processional ramp as a zone which is open air, yet both indoor and outdoor. The repetitive structure in its radial plan, along with the wire canopy, which is open air along the entire length of the old red corridor, creates an interplay with light and shadow and vector lines to create a complex and interesting dynamic and complex space, a twilight zone of sorts which acts as a threshold between the street below and the private levels above the school. I'm trying to kind of capture with the play of light and this kind of Parnasian kind of interplay, this kind of moment, that teetering on the edge, that moment before you fall, that being based in reality and fantasy at the same time, that kind of suspended belief that you need to have in kind of the essence of storytelling and theatre. To the right of this space, you start to see the kind of large, open, dynamic performing areas, and then you see the way in which the kind of private space of the schools use that same language of the door to open up and close down again, so to be private when it's needed and lockable at night when it's needed, while still giving this space to the public, and gives the capacity for students to open up and engage directly with the public. A lot of these services act as different stages and different areas in which they can engage with. Further up the right, the ramp is the site of the converging service line. So the service line, which is the old coal ramp, and then the pedestrian line, which takes you up the park. This is kind of made clear by a big stair, which acts as an open air amphitheatre, and grand stair, which kind of distinguishes that point up into the green parkland beyond. Directly adjacent to that site is the costume workshop. We start to see the way in which I've designed the kind of stagecraft classrooms to kind of be carved into the landscape as concrete plinths on which support the kind of secondary lightweight structure which enables the performance and more private spaces which students would like to control their visibility of. Above that space is the drama and dance studios, which occupies the rooftops, yet is still separate. The rooftops operate in such a way that they once again act as kind of stage surfaces in which students can, if they so choose, come out onto and perform to the staircase in open air below. So as a plan, you see that...
Just be aware of the time, Elise.
What time is it?
12 or 15 minutes.
You see the way in which in the colour there's all this kind of public realm, which is always open. In the white is the areas that which lock down, so that they're securable and still function as a school. Because for me, it was really important that even though I wanted to address this public realm, it still needs to function as a school and still needs to be practical in its use. So within those zones, so that's that same level, just colours so that you can understand a bit better. These are still open air, whereas these are lockable again. So once you open that first facade, you've got a secondary kind of level which is open air. You see the stair which leads you up to the school above when you need to take it. Set design workshop, circus training space, which from the previous space opens directly into the open air flexible performing area. You've got the lighting and sound design workshops, costume workshop, library, and then the terminating in the community workshop space where members of the public can come in and move from being the audience member to do maybe after hours workshop classes to be the performer. So the level above, you start to see the way this lightweight structure kind of snakes and ribbons across these kind of concrete, like heavier plinths. So you've got things like offices, like semi-formal gathering areas. This is all of these passageways are open air, so they directly relate to that kind of open air performing space, almost act as more of a catwalk amongst these larger areas. But then you've still got once again the lockable classrooms, which close down obviously because it's not always pleasant to be open air. In these spaces you have the music recording studios, can't read any of that, music rehearsal space, and because of the way the level works, you can walk up this stair and activate this level, which is very high up above the kind of flexible forming space, which is like high enough to mean that it functions as that kind of catwalk area. But then because of the change in site and the way that this moves up, by the time you come out here, you come out on at the top of the MPP, the stair, and on the kind of second level and the level above to the school. So around these performing areas are the spaces that I want to be private, so the music rehearsal spaces, the dance and drama studios, but I wanted to position them in a way so that they still related directly to these spaces, so that if the students so choose, they can curate the performance based on those. The rooftops all become these kind of spaces in which flexible performing areas can happen, and the students are created to take initiative and curate their own performances for the public on all the school surface as they question conventional ways of performing.
Great, thank you, Elise.